Can you walk me what you normally do throughout the sprint as a Scrum Master? Or can you walk me through your iteration as a Scrum Master? This is a question that kind of want to evaluate your understanding on how to implement the Scrum framework, or to kind of want to test your ability to see if you understand that Scrum is beyond just running events. And in this question, we are also going to answer a day in the life of a Scrum Master, because for you to walk me through your entire sprint or your entire iteration, you need to also kind of focus on typically what some of those days look like, and how some of those activities or events kind of run through the day. Now, also as a bonus, at the end of this video, I am also going to give you some tips on how to target interview questions. Uh, One of the things with interview these days, especially with the high competition in the job market, is not just to know Scrum and know the event. It's also in how you communicate. How are you saying what is very important, and I'm going to handle that. So the first thing I'm going to do, I will talk about how to talk about your day as a Scrum Master, and then how to talk about your entire sprint as a Scrum Master. So let's get straight into the discussion. All right, so you are on the Safe Scrum chat room with Dr. Francis Mbunya, and I know you already subscribed. If not, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and feel free to share if this is helping you, right? I know someone is also going to help them. All right, so let's get straight into our discussion for today. Number one, walk me through your sprint as a Scrum Master. My response is going to be, thank you very much for that question. Now, looking at my previous position where I worked as a Scrum Master for Blue Cross Blue Shield, I'm just using it as a context, right? One of the aspects you want to kind of leverage is contextualizing your responses, right? Because I can go like, oh, my iteration as Scrum Master, I facilitate event, I remove impediment. It doesn't really make any sense. Your advantage, your competitive advantage in every interview is your ability to contextualize your response. So I would go like, okay, in my most recent position, let me use a popular. In my most recent position with West Fargo, we were building an application that could help dictate fraudulent mobile check. So it kind of the application tried to dictate the history of the client, and also how frequent they've been depositing check, and also double check, use some metadata within the system to validate if they are going to approve automatically a mobile check deposit, or if they're going to put it on hold in order to investigate. So this was more or less to enhance security options or security permission around mobile check deposit. Now, looking at my typical week or why working there, now I want to look at sprint planning, because it's the first event that kind of launches the sprint, right? The days I have sprint planning are kind of super busy days. The first thing is because I need to first of all double check to make sure we have a ready backlog, which of course we always have, because we do our backlog grooming on time, or backlog refinement on time. But as a courtesy, I always kind of double check to make sure that we have this in place. I want to double check to make sure that all my team members are available on that day. And if they are not available, if for some reason there's an emergency and one person cannot come, what I want to do is that I want to kind of walk them through the backlog, or just ask them to quickly go through the backlog and send me an email of the availability and a couple of stories that they could take, so that when we're planning our capacity, we can be able to understand the availability. Right now, typically within that sprint planning, which often lasts for about an hour 15 minutes, maximum 2 hours, depending on how well our backlog was grown, and also depending on questions that are coming up as a pull story to have a conversation about them. Now, when we complete that sprint planning on that day and all our workload has been allocated, we have our sprint goal, we are ready to go. After that, what I want to do, I kind of just touch base with all my team members just to make sure that they are okay with the work that is assigned to them. Are there a couple of stuff that they might want the team to know? Maybe we miss out. Just that chit chat in the background kind of helped me to know that, all right, people did not just commit to the sprint goal or just because they wanted to kind of get away, right? So all of that behind the scene conversation is also very important. If for any reason there were some issues that were not clear, or there was a couple of questions that came up which kind of was indicating, or were indicating that we were kind of drawing back within the sprint, then I'm definitely going to meet with the PO to try to see how we resolve that, so that this doesn't happen in the next this doesn't happen within the next sprint. Now, one of the stuff I also kind of focus on is to liaise with the manager. If there are certain things that need my manager attention, I'm going to kind of try to set up a meeting with the manager just to update them, because I realize that one of the biggest challenge with implementing Scrum is the fact that we do stuff around the team level and we don't inform management on time. And when stuff really get to point where they are already beyond the scope of a team, it gets to management as a surprise. So always make sure I keep that. Now, if I still have more time, which sometimes I always do, I take time to understand the product backlog, kind of plan ahead, and also so that when we are having next conversation, I can kind of help the team guide them towards what we're expecting next. This kind of prepare their mind to make sure they're staying on top of their game. All right, now this seems very detailed. At the end of the video, I'm going to give you a brief answer, which is less than 2 weeks. The reason I'm taking time to explain every detail is because I want you to understand, not to replicate what I'm saying, right? Which is the reason I'm taking time to explain what happened. All right, now the day that I have daily stand-up, I know daily stand-up is like what we did yesterday, what we're gonna do today, and if there are any impediment. We sometimes, the team member feel like, oh, if this is all what we need to do, then why do we need to come on board every day just to do this, right? And sometimes they feel like, oh, why don't I just put my conversation on the team chat and don't come to daily stand-up? So for that reason, I try as much as possible to give my daily stand-up a fresh breath every session. A couple of stuff I do to make sure my stand-up are very interesting. I work with the co-located team. I just kind of really kind of make it more like a transparency meeting, right? For us to understand what each other are working on, look at how we can support. So you're not just coming to a daily stand-up to give your update, you're coming to see if you can be of help. So it's very important that you come to stand up. And sometimes I just play jokes like, okay, I know the people in India, it's about 10 p.m. Central Time, 10 a.m. Central Time, but I think it's almost about 9:30. I know you're ready for dinner now, so let's start with you, so that if you have not taken your dinner, you can go ahead. Now, can we roll it from there? Some days I can just flip the chat and say, okay, guys, this morning we are going to start from California. I know it's 8:30 Central Time and it's still about 6:30. I know many of them are still on bed. I'm not saying you're still on bed, but I kind of presume because it's a bit early. So we just want to give you that opportunity to start first today, and then. So the different techniques which we can use to make sure that we always make it engaging, not just like, oh, Peter, give me an update. Oh, this person give me an update. Some days I can okay, let's start from the top person on my screen. As I see on my screen, when you take it, just call who you want to come next. So I kind of make it engaging, and most often on the daily stand-up, we kind of say on our meet after, some people call it the after log, some people call it the parking lot. We also kind of just go a bit wild, like, okay, team, who has a tip today for a team? Maybe what are you looking forward for lunch today, and what do you have to share for the team? Or what some vacation plan? We're working towards Thanksgiving. we just make it a bit lively, right? Yeah. And I always encourage my team as well, especially for issues that keep on coming regularly and on our daily stand up. I always kind of raise up, team, what do you think we can have a brainstorming around this to kind of get some documentation and get more clarification? I think this issue has come up a couple of times, a bit of time. Yeah, sure, sure. Okay. Maybe James, can you just kind of sample the opinion of everyone and see what's a good time to meet? And let's put it on the calendar. Perfect. I don't want to be the only person doing it. I want to make the team feel like they own it. All right. So now, if I go to my backlog grooming, the purpose of the backlog grooming is definitely to get more clarity on what we have to do in the upcoming sprint. And as a Scrum Master, I try as much as possible to make sure that all my team members participate in backlog grooming, because if we don't do backlog grooming on time, there's high probability that our sprint planning is going to be a mess, right? Backlog grooming help us to go more deeper into some of those conversations or some of those stuff that might not really be clear. Most especially, it's very important if you work in a team where your product owner is definitely busy. Some teams have managers as product owner, or they have project managers as product owner, and these people are kind of almost everywhere. So we want to get them come in the backlog grooming meeting so that we can get more clarified, get into about two detail, go 2 level deep, right? At least 2 sprint deep into grooming our backlog. Make sure that everyone understands the story. Make sure that if we need more information about a story, we'll label it as a spike. Someone go research that, or we cannot put that in the sprint backlog while we are doing, and someone have some information about that. And with the spring backlog, with the backlog grooming, one of the things we also want to pay attention, not just kind of detailing and understanding and pointing. Sometimes we already kind of even start zooming who has the capacity to take up this, and we start already kind of getting people readiness. Mind readiness is one of the most important things, which is why constant backlog grooming meeting is very important. In some of the cases where I feel like my team is kind of lagging on the backlog, I might suggest we do backlog grooming twice a week, right? Or sometimes twice a week. It might be overwhelming, but this is not kind of constant, right? Normally, it's advisable in the middle of the spring before the next spring. But if my team is kind of really falling behind, and sometimes this happen because they might be engaged in other activity. Maybe a release is coming up, and there's a couple of work that they need to kind of push through to make sure that the story we're having and meeting the release, we might have that kind of situation, and we might look at some catch-up opportunity. Or I want to talk about the review, or the spring review, or the iteration review. Now, one stuff I want to emphasize here on this event is that it's not during the event that you send out invitation. Immediately you get into every team as a Scrum Master, what you do is that you set up a calendar. So the people you've already set up an automatic calendar, everyone receive an automatic invitation to be on this event. Now, all of these stakeholders, whosoever they might be, this event don't take them by surprise. It is part of their what they need to do. So most often, you don't even need to set a reminder because they have already had a reminder. My own reminder I do is mainly for my team, right? Go on the team channel. I might just give them, hold up, okay, team, this is kind of seems to be a busy week. Remember, we have a backlog grooming meeting on Thursday, and then next Monday we're going to be looking at our review. Let's start thinking about this. I always try to get them mentally prepared ahead, right? And the reason why I do that is because, let's say someone was planning a vacation. He said, oh yeah, next Monday, I think I'm going to be away. Team, heads up, I'm going to be away because I'm taking away off from this, and we can all kind of start preparing for that. So spring review is for us to be able to demonstrate any increment, or kind of just have a review. You must not only demo work that is okay, you demo work that is finished, but you review the work that you did not complete and why. It's called spring review, but they're 2 events in one. The spring demo and spring review is one event. Those are not separate events. The reason we call it spring review, because you can't give an excuse that, oh, it's a demo, we don't have anything to demo, so we can't come there. No, it's a review. So even if you don't have anything to demo, you can still review, right? So making sure that I understand which of my team member is going to be demoing or which of my team member is going to be reviewing what story, and then it helps us to be able to plan on time. And my role as a Scrum Master during the backlog review or during the spring review, not the backlog review, sorry, during the spring review is to ensure that we keep to the time box, ensure that, okay, I evaluate the overall performance, and also more or less I coach my team to make sure that they're not just reviewing story independently. They're trying to look at how this story meet our bigger goal. So the way they communicate, I try to evaluate that. If there are lapses, I note them down. We sort them out in the retrospective. And then come my best event, which is the spring retrospective, right? For the spring retrospective, what I'm paying attention is that I want to look at the big wins. I always like to get into my spring retrospective celebration, right? Team, I'm super excited. We did a great job. I know despite the fact that it was challenging, we had so many dependency, but we're still able to do it. So I just want us to give a big shout out to all the team members. Before we dive deep into looking at what we can improve and how we can better collaborate as a team, I just want to give some opportunity for us to appreciate ourselves, and I'm going to take it up. I'm just going to throw it back to all my team members. You have been super helpful. I've seen that communication going in the chat, in the team chat. I've seen people just doing back behind the scene collaboration, and the way I know that is because our daily stand-up has been on time. If you have not been doing that collaboration behind the scene, would have not been easy for us to meet our time box. So I just want to throw it back to you. And over to Mike, please, you have someone to show appreciation? Oh yeah, I think the PO has been super helpful, and that goes is just create an environment of gratitude, and the team feel like, you know what I'm doing is not just behind the scene. At least people know that, and it also encourages others that have not been supporting to pull up with the support, right? So very important. Now, so we talk about all the events, spoke about all the events. Now, let me give you a summary in less than 2 minutes of when we say, can you walk me through how your sprint would be as a Scrum Master, or walk me through your normal iteration as a Scrum Master? Now, the shorter version of this response, you will say, oh, thank you. Throughout my sprint, the first thing I want to make sure that my events are all scheduled and they are operating, or they will run on time. So have that checked by looking at, are there other major organization events that might affect my event? That's the first thing I try to check, right? If there are major events that might affect my event, for instance, we might sometimes we might have a release coming up, and management wants to hold a couple of preparatory meetings that might be a bit contradictory to our team meeting, then we might need to kind of be flexible. We are all agile, right? So, but then what I pay attention is ensure that my sprint plannings are effective by making sure my the team capacity, the velocity, the team is only committing to what they can do, and making sure that we are implementing the feedback we have from the retrospective during the spring planning. Now, on daily stand-up, I also make sure that my daily stand-up are fun. They're not just start to update. They're more of a transparency meeting. They're more of a support meeting. We can just share and always create some time on the backlog to see, okay, we'll have some tips or some working tips that can help the team, and give some team members some, at least one new thing to learn every daily stand up, so that they feel excited coming there. Now, I do my backlog grooming meeting at the middle of my sprint, right? The reason I do that at the middle, because I want to be aware of what we're working on next, and if there are any challenges, I ensure that we address them before the next sprint, so we don't get into the next sprint planning and start figuring out, oh, this is missing, this is missing. So that mind preparedness is very important. The last day of my sprint, I have my review. My review, I'm ensuring that we are demoing every increment that came out from that sprint, and we are reviewing every story that we did that did not actually amount to an increment. We also want to make sure that we review it, and we're also reviewing the story that we did not complete, so that we know why we did not complete, and if there's some major obstacle or major drawbacks that came up, we want to make sure we're handling that in the retrospective. They are fun. I always love them because the opportunity for me to kind of just appraise my team, tell them, hey, you're doing really great, and then also give them the opportunity to thank other people that have been helping them within the sprint. So in general, what I also do within the sprint, apart from just facilitating event, I'm collaborating with my PO to ensure that our backlog is well groomed, to ensure that if there are ways I could support the PO, maybe in preparing some demo deck, I'm always there to do that, and always kind of have at least a sync meeting, like we just meet at least 15 minutes just to talk about the team, get the feedback from the PO or what they think from about the team, and discuss some issue, try to build that tight relationship there. I also create a lot of time for my team, most of time not just to talk about work, but just to talk about how they feel about the team, and also just to know that much them better, just talk about what's going on in their life, and if there are a couple of things that I could step in and support, because I also wear a coaching cap, right? But for me to do that, I am really still focused on my work. I pay a lot of attention on my personal development, so it's very important on my part. Within the spring, I'm also focusing on communicating, keeping that communication with leadership, also keeping communication with other teams and other scrum masters, and looking at trying to learn some of the new things that are coming from their end. So I also schedule regular meetings with other scrum master within the organization, just to share what new stuff are coming, what are some of the new challenges they're having, that exchange of idea, giving aside our community of practice. So typically that's going to be like how my week always go as a scrum master. But I'm kind of forgetting one thing, because sometimes, since I'm not a whole technical person, I spend a lot of time understanding the stories my team are working on in relation to the roadmap and the release plan, so that I can better support them. All right, perfect. And one more thing I promise that I'm going to do at the end of this video is to talk about how you respond to questions. Now, you want to make sure that if you look at the way I summarize this last part, I did not go by step by step by step. You want to make sure it is conversational. You want to make sure it is conversational, and also make sure that you are bringing a bit of reality into it. For instance, you can see that question like, all right, I think one of the places I really enjoy working most is this, which I want to use as an example, because the PO was super helpful, collaborative. My manager was kind of super grateful, so it just created a really good environment. So what we did, or what we normally do, you can picture all of that. So make sure your interviews are like communication, and not just one person sitting behind the screen and responding to question. Yes, sprint planning, the day one, like they're looking for someone that can represent leader, can represent a leadership level. You want to put on that cap. If you put on that cap, you realize that you are definitely going to move on with that position. Super Wednesday. And for anyone who is looking for coaching, hit me up and we are going to help you. Have an amazing team. Our Safe Scrum Master certification, we have the next training coming up on Monday, 3rd of October. You want to get into that class. A special addition for this session is that we're also going to be teaching Jira for Scrum Master as part of our certified Scrum Master training session. So it's something, it's a value you cannot beat online. So I want to invite you to be part of that. All right. I see you on Friday on our next video.